I ended up getting like just under an inch of rain yesterday, and I got about another half an inch or so of rain coming in this weekend. But when I take a look at my water situation, maybe I've gotten about 5 inches of rain in the last 3 months. It has been very dry. I think, I legitimately think I got somewhere around 5 inches of rain over the last 3 months. And when I talk about rain, I always say that 1 inch of rain a week is what I would consider the average, right? And so if I got the average rain amount, I would have gotten, in 3 months, I would have gotten 12 inches of rain. And I got about half of that. And so it's been very dry. But I think that the weather is, the rain is coming back in. And so I got another chance of it raining this weekend. And then I got a chance of it raining, the following Saturday as well. And so it's looking better. And these animals, I got my water bladders in yesterday, and then I got a few things in yesterday. I gotta get everything squared away, but I'm about ready to roll. Here about next week, I'll be taking animals over to my new ranch, and then I'll get everything rolling. And I want to, this morning I was thinking about it, and I was like, I'm gonna spend some time talking about the business side of things, because yesterday I was going over this whole thing, and I really wanted to, go over the solution again, right? I've already said that, like if we were going to take an honest look at the entire population, we end up in a situation where 90% of everybody in all of America makes less than $90,000 a year. If you want to be a top 1%er, you would make $250,000 a year. But by the time you get to somebody like me, I mean, and it's like I generate somewhere around I would anticipate that I'm going to generate somewhere around $5 million this year. All right, and I've already talked about my balance sheet. If I were to sit on my hands right now and just run this business, if I were to just sit on this 10.5 acre farm and just run this business, I could effectively already live the rest of my life and just do this if I wanted to. Even right now, I'm sitting on about 200,000 cash, right? And then my equity portfolio is maybe evaluated at about $2 million. And so it's not but I've already discussed this, the whole thing about, it's going to seem unfair. And I was talking about this yesterday, and it's going to seem unfair, but at the end of the day, I mean, the only way to have people like me make less money is have me underperform. So I got to do less work, or I gotta do less of a good job. I gotta underperform, or I have to do less work. That's realistically the only way for someone like me to make less money. And is either of those situations, they're not exactly an ideal situation. Why would you want to have a person like me underperform, right? I mean, I'm effectively, it's like, what benefit would happen? What benefit would there be from having someone like me do less work, right? It would be of zero benefit. It would be a net negative, right? And so I understand, and it's like it looks unfair, but it's about to get worse. And I wanted to go over the solutions again, because it's like, I talk about this all the time. It's like, how did I do it? How did I, generate such a massive amount of money? We're going to go over this again. I've always said that if you're looking to make money, you really need to start looking at equitable assets, right? I've always talked about this. If you're looking to make a large amount of money, not even a large amount of money, even if you only made 10% of the money that I do, and you did it for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and you did it knowledgeably, you would effectively I'm telling you right now, even right now, with just what I have, if I were to sit on this 10.5 acre farm forever, and not even forever, just right this moment, right? If I were to sit on this 10.5 acre farm right now, I could already effectively buy anything on the entire planet. All right. I mean, I have about 200,000 cash, and I have about a $2 million equity portfolio, and I'm net positive cash flow about $100,000 a year. Right. I mean, I can already buy anything on the entire planet. Right, even after I pay for everything, I still have 200,000 cash left over. You know, if I were to just run my business as is and just sit on this 10.5 acre farm forever and just run this business, I would effectively have a, you know, a $2 million, equity portfolio. And I would have, and I would have an excess of about 100,000 cash a year. I can already buy anything on the entire planet. All right, effectively anything, short of like drugs, alcohol, a private jet. I mean, short of anything like that, I can already buy anything on the entire planet. Money is effectively negligible to me. All right, and it's like, how do you get to this point, right? I mean, when I take a look, it's like I made it all the way here. I had to split my chops open for almost 15 years to make it, and I finally made it. And in terms of a spiritual aspect, I don't feel any sort of resentment. I'm not like, I'm not like, oh my God, look at me, I'm gonna go and get myself a Lamborghini now, and I'm not like that, right? Oh my God, now it's time for me to go and get myself a Rolex and just flex on everybody. That's not me, right? In all reality, when I look back at, when I take a look at my situation, I would sincerely hope that other people make it as well. All right, I sincerely hope that that's the one thing you're gonna get from me. I'm not gonna sit around and hope that y'all fail. I've already said that, in reality, it's like most of, if not all of you are not going to make it. All right. My big goal is to get you to the 10% mark, because if you get to the 10% mark and you can do it knowledgeably, you can effectively either practice for free if you actually want to become a farmer, which I would not suggest. A lot of you don't understand that if you just made more money, you would never think about farming again. All right. Most people do not want to be a farmer. Farming is going to be like one of the hardest things you've ever done in your entire life. Legitimately one of the hardest things you could do on the entire planet. All right, you probably do not want to become a farmer. In reality, you probably just want to make more money. All right, in reality, if you made more money, you would never think about farming again. All right, and so if we're going to talk about the idea of making money, all right, how do I do it? How did I do it? And how do I generalize this idea? How do I go over this idea in a way that it would be applicable to more people? What we're talking about is tax-deductible, equitable assets that you can knowledgeably appreciate. That is the long story short. That's how you do it. You find, and I've always talked about the big things that I go over are one, real estate, rental property, and number two, equitable business, right? Because when you take a look at me, this right here, this is effectively just a cattle business that's being run on a piece of land, right? The reason that I generate such a massive amount of money is because I can go onto a random piece of land. It doesn't matter where I go. I can just go onto a piece of land and start myself a cattle business. That's what makes me such a massive amount of money. All right, and if you take a look at it, even right now, I'm on a 10.5 acre field, and I have about $2 million in equity, and I have about 200,000 cash, and I'm also net positive cash flow, probably about $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year, something like that. All right, and so even as of right now on this 10.5 acre field, I effectively make enough money to do whatever the heck I want. Money has become negligible to me. I can essentially buy anything on the entire planet, short of like, drugs, alcohol, gambling, short of anything, like short of what I call being an idiot, right? I mean, if I want to buy 100 cattle, I can buy 100 cattle. If I want to go and I want to buy myself a new piece of land, I can go and buy myself a new piece of land. If I want to go and do whatever, within a reasonable margin, I can do whatever the heck I want. All right, and I still have a large amount of money left over. A large amount of money. I guess not a large amount, but enough money for me to do essentially anything that I could possibly want to do. All right, I mean, even after I pay for everything, I still probably have like somewhere between $60,000 and $100,000 a year cash left over. Even right now, I'm sitting on about somewhere between 150 and 200,000 liquid. Right, I mean, it's not, and I have about 2 million in equity. All right, I mean, like the solution to, and I've always said that the solution, if you're in a situation where it's like, you understand that you can make more money, and I've always said that you need to come to the conclusion that if you are 100 IQ, you have the capacity, you have the mental capacity to effectively become a multimillionaire, you mentally you have enough brain power to become a multimillionaire. All right, it's just going to take time, and I've always said that you cannot skip the work. All right, you cannot skip the work. If you try and skip the work, if you're in the mindset where you're thinking that you can skip the work, number one, you're probably not even going to get to the 10% mark if you live to be 5,000. And if you actually go for it, you'll actually end up just throwing yourself off a cliff. There is no skipping the work. You have to do the work. It's not possible to skip the work. I've always said that one of the biggest criteria for me in terms of when I take a look at my life and I take a look at it for what it is, what was one of the biggest criteria that was required for me to become so successful is that I had to practice all the time. I legitimately practiced every single day, even when I did not get paid. All right, I mean, legitimately. I mean, this is my 15th year. All right, and it's like, and I would not have made such a massive amount of money if I effectively did not become one of the most capable farmers on the entire planet. How many people do you know right now that you could just scoop them up, put them on a bus, put them in the middle of Central Texas by themselves, and they will just effectively, you come back a year later and they would have made $1 million, right? It's effectively just me. All right, it's a very short list. It's not just me. It's a very short list. It's not very many people. All right, and so and it's even as of right now, it's kind of like when you take a look at my results, it's like, here is a guy on a 10.5 acre field running commercial cattle, and he is net positive like $60,000-$80,000 a year. He has like a $2 million equity portfolio. I mean, this is kind of ridiculous. My results are like in the top, and I've always said that in terms of if you were to take a look at my results and look at them on a broader scale, it effectively puts me somewhere in the top 0.00001 to top 0.00001% of the entire U.S. economy for the year 2024. All right, I mean, and so, I mean, if we were to just take a look at it for what it is, right? And, it's like, what's the solution, right? I mean, because it's like telling everybody that, it's like, oh, you're poor and, it's not going to do anything, right? So what's the solution? You're looking for equitable assets. And when you're looking for equitable assets, you're looking for what? The biggest market that you can find. And, two examples that I give for this are real estate and business. If you have a piece of rental property that is net cash flow positive, right, it's producing a net positive return, you find something that is equitable. A piece of land is equitable, right? A rental property is equitable, right? A business is equitable, right? If you want to go and you want to find, a piece of rental property, and you want to figure out how much it's worth, what is that called? It's called an appraisal, right? And when you have an appraisal, you don't ask your friend, you don't ask Billy Joe Bob what your asset is worth. You go and you find somebody who is very well qualified. I mean, usually these people work in places like banks. All right, you go and you ask them, what is your asset worth? I want to buy this property, show it to the banker, and then they will appraise it for you, right? And then they will tell you this property is worth XYZ amount of money. All right, and then you take a look at it, and then you ask the bank, if I were to finance this deal, how much would it cost, right? And then they will give you numbers, right? Oh, if you want a loan for $350,000, and you have to put a 30% down payment, right? We will finance the down payment for you on a 30-year term at a 9.5% interest. And then we will finance the rest of the loan for you on a 20-year term for whatever, right? 10% interest. And so you take a look at it and you're saying, oh, well, I want a loan for $3,500, right? And then you take a look at it, or not 3,500, you take a look at it, it's 350 grand, and your loan is effectively going to cost you about $2,500 a month, right? Somewhere between $2,500 and $3,000 a month. And so you take a look at that number, and then you go and you find, and then you go and you start negotiating with the owner. And when you negotiate with the person that you're going to buy the property from, it doesn't matter where you go. You know, it doesn't matter who you're talking to, right? I've always said that the big thing is that you do not come off as a poor person. You don't ever say things like, I don't have the money. You always negotiate the contract, all right? You do things, and I've always said, how do you negotiate a contract? Let's say that you're in a situation where you have zero money. What is a realistic strategy for you to negotiate a contract when you have zero money? You don't say, I don't have the money, please help me, let's be buddy pow pow. So, right, you don't ever say things like that. What do you say? Right, I will effectively, the bank has told me that the appraisal value of your property is this amount. Or you don't even have to tell them that, right? I mean, you can keep that information to yourself. And, you effectively more or less give them the price that they want, right? And then you negotiate the terms, right? I've always said that every contract has two sides. It is the terms and it is the price. If you give one, then negotiate the other. I will give you the price, but will you give me a 1-year non-payment agreement? Right? I mean, somewhat of a, some sort of a non-payment agreement, right? An option contract, delay payments until, like my situation right now is that I got a 6-month option contract, and then I have a non-payment agreement until May. So I don't have to pay, I closed the contract by December 30th, and I don't have to pay monthly installments until May of next year. That's my contract. That's the contract that I have as of right this moment. All right, I'm not pulling this stuff out of thin air. That is my contract. That is legitimately my contract. I don't pay monthly installments until May of next year. And what's the big idea? I'm going to put cattle on the property and start making my money first. When I make the money, then I can, and I anticipate, I've taken a look at my assets. I've taken a look at what I got going on. I've anticipated how much money's involved. And I believe that if I have until May of next year, then I have a running head start. And if I have a running head start, I can really get ahead, and it puts me in a very good spot. And how did I get that contract? I more or less gave the owner the asking price, right? I took I think I took like a 7% deduction off the listing price or something like that. But I more or less gave them their listing price. But I negotiated the terms very thoroughly. Why did I do that? Because now I can just go and make the money. It doesn't matter to me. The thing about me is that if I farm, I make money. And and when I farm, I effectively do it so well that anytime that I'm actively doing it, I am effectively in the very, 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 very top of the entire U.S. economy in terms of financial aspects. All right, and so that's how I did it, and that's why I did it, and et cetera, et cetera. Even right now, but that's how you do it. All right, you find an equitable asset. You take it to the bank. You ask the banker. You don't, and I've always said you have to understand. And this is going to sound horrible, but we're just gonna have to call a spade a spade. If you're a poor person, you will actually come off as a poor person in everything that you do. You will effectively come off as a poor person all the time. You do not, and this is why this is how I communicate. When I talk about a deal, this is how I communicate. These are things that I do not say. I think about what I'm going to say, and I offer a deal. You never ask anybody for anything. I've talked about this. You don't want to ask people for things. Why? Because that's what poor people do. You want to offer a deal, right? I found this deal. Will you take a look at it for me? They, and then you take it to the banker, and then the banker, they will tell you an interest rate, and they will tell you their loan terms, and they will tell you how much they are willing to finance. Right, and different banks have different lending standards, right? And so there some questions that you could ask: will you finance a down payment for me? What are your interest rates? What are your lending terms? Et cetera, et cetera. And then show them your deal, right? And when they tell you something like it's going to be $2,500 a month. If you want to buy a 50-acre field, it's going to cost you $2,500 a month. All right, like let's say, like my property right now, I show, my property right now, I'm effectively going to be, those are the numbers, right? The whole thing is about $2,750, right? And so, when the banker looks at it and then they give you the number, you don't go, oh my God, $2,750. I can't do that. I don't have the money. You don't ever say things like that. You say, thank you, banker. Thank you for the information. And then you go and you talk to the owner. And then when you talk to the owner, I will give you your price. You don't say, but that's effectively what you're going to do. You're effectively going to tell the owner that you're going to give them their price. I will give you the price, but I want better terms. Give me a 6-month option contract, and then give me a 5-month non-payment agreement. That's 11 months for you to figure it out. All right. And then, now you got 11 months. All right, and so you run the business or whatever it may be. You stockpile some money. You take a look at your situation, and I've always said that in terms of the real estate side of things, I would anticipate that rates go lower within the next few years. Either which way it's going to happen, I don't know. But the central bank is a reactionary. They're reactionary. They don't really front run things. And so they do front run things, but I mean it's got to have something real bad has to happen. But I would, one way or another, I would anticipate that interest rates go lower within the next few years. All right, within the next few years, interest rates are probably going to go lower. You can refinance. I am planning that within 2 years I will refinance my loans. Right, I was talking about this. In reality, as of right now, granted that you're not in some super bubble, right? I mean, you're not buying real estate in like like me. I'm buying farmland in the middle of nowhere. All right, farmland in the middle of nowhere is not going to collapse in value. Let's just be honest with ourselves. I don't anticipate that. If property values fall, farmland in the middle of nowhere is not gonna tank in value. All right, I would not anticipate that it does. And so get yourself if you're looking to buy yourself a make sure you're not in some super bubble, right? You don't want to be in some super inflated area. And then if you realistically, from what I see in terms of the utmost sincerity, the best information that I can give, I don't think that real estate evaluations are going to fall more than 10%. All right, I don't think so. The appraisal value of property is probably not going to fall more than 10%. Granted that you don't buy property in the middle of some super bubble area. All right, I don't think that and so it's like if you get on 10% under market value, then you're probably safe even in terms of a market correction in your area. And I would also anticipate that interest rates go down, and also I would anticipate over the long term that rents go up. And so, you can, it's like if you got yourself a 1-year non-payment agreement, you held on to the money, you utilize the money, not you utilize, don't use the money, hold on to the money, right? That's your safety margin, right? If you got a 1-year non-payment agreement, you can run the thing for a year, collect the money, you can sit on the money, and then, you can, and then you run the thing for another year, you raise rents twice, right? And then, you've increased your cash flow, and if you've increased your cash flow, you've also increased the appraisal value of the building. Granted that we're not talking about some massive commercial building. Commercial real estate is something that I don't really have a whole lot of knowledge in, but I mean we're talking about fourplexes and things like that, right? And so and fourplexes are also risky because but I mean a fourplex is it's a pretty solid, granted that you find a good one, right? I've always said you got to find a good one, and and if you do that, and if you do that effectively twice, you essentially make so much money that you can do whatever you want. I'm being completely serious. It's like once you learn how to obtain equitable assets, and then you obtain equitable assets that give you tax deductions, and they also net positive cash flow, and you have a reasonable idea of how to appreciate the value of your asset and your cash flow over the future long term, then you effectively, if you do that 2 or 3 times, you essentially make so much money that you can do whatever you want. That's the solution. I've always said, that's the solution, right? And so it's like, and the big benefit of having something like an equitable asset, I wanted to talk about this real fast. So one of the big benefits of having an equitable asset is that when you have an equitable asset and you have some equity in that asset, like let's say you have a piece of land and you have $100,000 in equity on your land. When you take that equity to the bank, and the banker, you can actually collateralize your equity for a line of credit, so you don't have to use 100,000 cash. You can say, hey, I have this thing that is worth $100,000, right? It's been appraised at $100,000, you know, and I want to take a line of credit against it. The bank will lend you about, you know, about 80% of that, 80,000. If you have 100 in equity, the bank will lend you 80,000. And if they lend you 80,000, you're gonna pay like you're gonna pay, I don't even know, like you're probably gonna pay like $500 a month. All right, and so, you know, and I've always said that, you know, you really do not want to be in a situation where you're looking to make money via straight cash. And if you take a look at my situation, you know, I have about 2 million in equity, and I only have about 200,000 in cash. You know, you don't want to be in a situation where you're looking to flip-flop that. You don't want to be in a situation where you're looking to make $2 million cash and you're sitting on $200,000 worth of equity. That's ridiculous. It's not going to happen. If you have you know, like my situation is that I have 2 million in equity and I have 200,000 cash. And a lot of you, you know, this is actually kind of an interesting point. A lot of you are thinking completely flip-flopped. You're actually thinking about making $2 million worth of cash. And you're sitting on about, maybe, if you even have, you know, maybe even 200, but I mean, you're closer to being flip-flopped than you are to going in the right direction. You're sitting on about $200,000 worth of equity, and you're thinking about making $2 million cash. And that you should not, I would suggest that you do not think like that. I would suggest that you think about making $2 million worth of equity and then having $200,000 cash. That's where I'm at, right? And I can effectively already do anything on the entire planet. And so, you know, that's it for me today, YouTube. Y'all have a good one.